If you could choose to have a black belt in any martial art, which one would you choose? Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, Karate? While each of them focus on different subsets of fighting, they also have entirely different bases for their belt ranking system. So that's going to be what we look at today. We're going to look at how many belts they have, the colors they have, the stripes that they have on each one, the skill and technique required to earn those belts, the history behind the belt system. I'm not going to lie to you guys, some of these belt systems, they don't have the best reputation. So we'll see if that's warranted. The only black belt that I have is in karate, so I figured that's the one we should start off with. I actually got it when I was 11 years old and recently got my 4th degree. Despite that, I think there's somebody better that could help us out with this.
Hello. What's up? You can't see me here. Where's my... There we go. What's up?
Whenever I think of belts in martial arts, I think of the karate black belt. And I don't know where it comes from.
Right. And there are so many, there are so many myths surrounding the black belt. And it's funny because if you look at the name in Japanese for black belt, the shodan literally means first level. And a lot of people think it's the end, but it's actually just a new beginning. And also the colors are in different orders in different dojos. And so it's totally different depending on where you go. There's no real standard, unfortunately.
Yeah, what are the most common colors you see, I guess, karate internationally?
White, yellow, green, blue, brown, black. These are the Q belts. Yeah.
We had white, yellow, orange, green, purple, red, brown, black.
Okay, same. We have the exact same, except we don't have the red one.
Comparing these martial arts is going to be difficult, like I mentioned, but I think I've got a decent system here. We're going to talk about how many belts there are in each system, the stripes that each of these belts have. 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. I think we had 7 stripes spread out throughout our 8 belts. That means before black belt, there are 14 rankings. The requirements for these belts, the time that it takes, the difficulty for each of these belts, and then I think an interesting one would be to look at the public image for each one. And while gathering all this information, I'd also like to get to the bottom of some things.
Tell me this, is this myth or martial art? The belt crossing behind your back means that you should be weary of people when you're not around.
It is the traditional way, actually, of tying the belt with the cross behind the back. But it's more for supporting your lower back, especially when you train for many hours. You want that back support to be able to keep training.
Myth or martial art? The belt ranking system in karate was white belt, it's a clean belt. Then it turns into red because you bled on it. And then it turns black once the blood is crusted over. Is that true or false? Is it true or false?
No.
Which one is it? Is it myth or martial art?
There are many of these stories, like the belt turns purple because you're beaten black and blue, or it goes another color because, it's yellow because you peed on it. I don't know why, but there are many different stories about the different belt colors. But in reality, many of the old styles don't have all these colors. They were added later. It's part of a larger system that karate adapted from Judo, called the Dan Q system. And then, when karate was modernized in mainland Japan, they had to adopt this because it was part of the criteria set forth by the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai, which is the Japanese Martial Arts Federation. Because karate wasn't originally a Japanese martial art like Judo or Kendo was, for instance. It was an Okinawan, but it wasn't even named karate. That was another criteria in order to modernize it in mainland Japan. They had to change the name. They had to adopt a karate uniform, they had to start using the belts, and all of these changes led to what we today refer to as karate. But if you look at old photos of old pioneers or masters, they never wear the belts, they don't even wear the karate uniform. Usually they actually practice in their underwear. The question is, where did Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo, come up with this ranking system or belt system?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Meaning, the rabbit hole goes deep. And you gotta keep searching, my friend.
I was gonna say, this is on me now, too. Dang it. Dang. Okay, well, I've got a lot of work ahead of me then.
The journey never ends.
I'll take it from here.
And to give you some quick context on the belts, because everybody else is going to as well, white belt and yellow belt, you're a beginner. Orange belt and green belt, you're probably starting to get decent at the techniques. By the time you get to purple belt, I trust you enough to spar and use these basics on other people. Brown belt, in my opinion, you are rounding out everything you've learned to prepare for black belt. All throughout this time, you're practicing katas, and by the time you get to black belt, then you can start learning what those katas mean. And not everybody does it that way. This right here is, this is my black belt. This is a 4th degree black belt in karate. Since I was 3 years old, I bled for this, I cried for this, and I sweat a bunch for this. I still sweat a bunch to this day. And more times a week than I wear this belt, I drink Element. Which is a sponsor of today's video. Dang, got him. In any given bag that I take to any given location, I have at least 2 or 3 packs of Element. Element is a 0 sugar electrolyte drink mix that essentially just replenishes the salt that you lose when you sweat. If I'm traveling, I drink this. If I'm in a tournament, I drink this. If I'm hiking, I drink this. I take super intense classes. After each one of those, I drink an Element. But listen to me, for real, I am so grateful that Element sponsors the channel because I drink Element 4 times a week, and I have for the last probably 6 months. In that 6 months, I cannot tell you last time I had a cramp. I never feel dehydrated. Check this out. Boom, right back down. Elastic skin, baby. I typically feel very refreshed after drinking this stuff. I'm not the only person who feels this way about it. Plenty of professional athletes, I think like 30% of the NFL, whenever you see them hit that thing, there's Element inside of it. I get messages all the time from people saying how great it tastes. All of their flavors are delicious, but if you order using my link, that's drinklmnt.com/Sensei Seth. You get a free sample pack, which is 1 of each of the flavors. There's 8 total. If you try all of them and you don't like it, they will give you your money back. You can give the sample pack to somebody else that you think might like it. They'll give you your money back. That's how confident they are in it. That's drinklmnt.com/Sensei Seth. I think you should try it. It's delicious. It's a very easy ad read for me. Thank you to Element for sponsoring this video. Hopefully you'll sponsor some more in the future. If not, I'll drink it anyway. Thank you to you guys for supporting these links whenever I have them. I'm a little sicky poo right now, so I'm gonna go drink an Element and probably feel better very soon. Ah, son of a gun. I rolled my ankle so bad. Chair of doom. Element's not gonna help with that. I think karate's one of the more vast information systems. Punches, kicks, kata, self-defense techniques, locks and holds. We sparred. I'm gonna say, as far as requirements go, a lot. The time that it takes for a person to become a karate black belt, it took me 7 years. But after running a poll on Instagram, yeah, it was dead center between 6 and 7 years. I'm gonna call it 7. The difficulty of this when it comes to athleticism, lower. When it comes to sheer like brain power and memory, it's a lot. So I'm gonna call it like a medium difficulty. The image that a karate black belt gets at this point, it's pretty low. If you walk around in public and you tell people you got a karate black belt, at least in the US, people are gonna make fun of you. I know that from experience. Which is probably why people choose to do jiu-jitsu these days. Kind of like I did in 2016. The only difference between then and now, I have 3 stripes on my white belt. Yes, I am an 8-year white belt, technically. My experience with jiu-jitsu is, in our karate curriculum, we kind of did the bare minimum for what you would need in jiu-jitsu. So by the time I started officially taking classes, I was familiar. I wasn't good, but I was familiar. And I already had my black belt in karate, so I didn't really pursue any ranking. I just kind of went. This is a bad situation. It's been on and off since 2016. I've definitely gotten more acclimated, but I know near nothing about the belt system other than what it feels like to roll with specific belt colors. Weirdly enough, mostly black belts. I don't know how that happens, but that's, you know. So once again though, I'm gonna need somebody's help with the explanation of these belts. How long have you been taking jiu-jitsu?
So I started jiu-jitsu pretty early on. After UFC 1, I read about it. This was like 1993.
UFC 1, dang.
Yeah, spent the next couple of years anywhere I could find a Hoist seminar or Hickson seminar, or any videotapes or anything I could get my hands on. It was real different back there. There was like there were no instructors. Everybody was still in Brazil. And so then I joined the Marine Corps after that. And so from like 97 to 2002, I didn't train. And then our unit was activated for the Iraq War. So
Yeah, long story short, Frank's a badass. Perfect guy to explain these belts to us.
yep. So the adult ranks are white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, and then black. So each belt, 1 stripe, 2 stripe, 3 stripe, 4 stripe, then you're eligible for the next belt.
Which means, as far as rankings go, there are white belt, 1, 2, 3, 4. Blue belt, 1, 2, 3, 4. 20. No, it's 21. Trust me, I did the math. 5 rankings for each belt plus the black belt.
So yeah, so from white belt to blue belt, it's really like an accumulation of basic knowledge.
Right.
What are the positions?
Yeah.
What are the submissions?
And why aren't blue belts allowed to do jiu-jitsu anymore?
Why aren't they allowed to
Do jiu-jitsu anymore?
blue belts?
I just heard that they don't. I haven't got my blue belt for that
Right.
reason.
Oh,
Because they're not allowed
yeah.
to come to
Yeah, they
jiu-jitsu.
can't. Once they get to blue belt, they quit.
Right.
It's not that they can't come; they won't come.
Oh, they just don't come. What's like the average time you see for somebody going from white to blue?
White to blue, probably 1.5 to 3 years, maybe.
Blue belt to purple belt.
Again, probably I would say probably 2 to 3 years. Blue belts quit because life happens.
Yeah.
Purple belts quit because their heart gets broken on the mat. You've accumulated all this knowledge, and then
Yeah.
at purple belt, there comes a point where you're not learning new stuff anymore. So you've got to really kind of buckle down, and now you're refining and trying to figure out how do I now apply all of this stuff that I've learned.
Interesting. Like the feeling, the correlation is for jiu-jitsu blue belts compared to a Taekwondo black belt, a karate
Yeah.
black belt.
And
The way Matt was just talking, he was like,
Yeah.
it feels like there's like a weight on me now.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt when I got my first black belt. So
Yeah.
I was like,
You just got your blue belt.
last week. What it feels like, what I've been telling people is it feels heavier. So I was in the military for a little while, and when you started to get this cool guy piece of flair on your left shoulder, you acted like it was super heavy. When I was a white belt, nobody expected me to know anything, didn't expect me to be any good. I could roll with anybody, and if I got beat, well, he's a white belt.
Yeah.
If I beat someone, I was like, wow, he's good as a white belt.
Yeah.
Next rank up, now whether it's self-imposed or not, there's pressure behind it.
For sure.
I walk in the gym now with a blue belt, and people think, well, he at least has some idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
And the difference between me on Wednesday of last week and Monday of today is pretty negligible.
Yeah, right.
Except for this.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the first comparison that we really have is the purple belt in jiu-jitsu and a black belt in karate. I think the reason this comparison happens is 1, the time frame is about the same. But 2, the vast number of techniques possible in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Let's look at karate for example. Everything happens on this plane. There's grappling, there's techniques, there's throws, but almost everything happens from 2 people starting with their feet on the ground, their head in the sky. And there's a lot of moves in karate. Now imagine if you could invert these characters in any physical possible combination. The moves are essentially endless. So in order to compute all of that information, it has to take longer. It's gonna feel like a lot bigger of a deal. I don't even know how to do the math on it. I hope somebody else will someday. I don't have the brain power for that. So for requirements, we're just gonna put infinite because I don't know. The time that it takes, according to my poll, on average, 9 to 10 plus years. Some people on that poll, by the way, put 3 years. I saw you, okay? Now I know you're a liar. The difficulty to get to your black belt, it's gonna be high. The image though, the public perception the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt has, high again. Super big. Big public perception for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And as far as where the belts come from in Jiu-Jitsu, well, we're left with a familiar story.
do you know if there was any direct influence from any martial arts that?
The only one that I could think of, and I don't know exactly, would have been Judo because
Yeah.
that's what they learned originally.
Right.
Was Judo.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So it was.
I thought it was a Japanese jiu-jitsu influence.
Depending on who you ask, they
Yeah.
either learned Kodokan Judo.
Yeah.
Maeda,
Yep.
he was a student of Goro Kano who founded
Yes.
Judo.
Yep.
So technically, that's what they learned. They took the ground fighting from Judo,
Yep.
the Niwaza,
Yep.
and modified that and focused on the ground aspect versus the takedown aspect.
Interesting.
Which means naturally our next belt system is going to be Taekwondo. My experience with Taekwondo, have you ever binge watched a series in like 3 days and then you explained that series to a friend? I did like the Taekwondo version of that. I learned most of the forms, I learned the kicks, the curriculum. I even lived in the back of a dojo and was granted a black belt. I think it was I think I was on like a temporary black belt visa. I'm pretty sure it's expired. I don't really know how it works. And I skipped all the other belts. So like, I don't really know how they work.
So we all start off at a white belt. I think that's pretty universal around all martial arts.
That's what I've heard.
Then we go up white with yellow stripe to yellow.
Okay.
And then we use the stripes in between, but then we're gonna go to green. After green, we go to blue, blue to red, and red is your progression to black belt. So you have the black stripe, you have the boat-on belt, which is half and half, kind of symbolize you getting closer to that black belt rank.
Interesting.
And then of course, you finish with the black belt. What I'm wanting for all of our lower belt students, white to yellow belt, is good respect, good discipline, good focus, listening to their parents, good at school. That's what's gonna be most important. It's gonna make them more effective human beings, right?
Right.
So once they get those 5 stripes, they're gonna know that they are ready for testing. But every belt's gonna have a punch, a kick, and a form. And then on top of that, we have sparring and board breaking requirements as we get to a higher level.
Also, to keep the lineage up, while karate and BJJ's belts most likely derived from judo, Taekwondo's belts most likely derived from karate.
So the cookie one, the governing body for Taekwondo, I don't have an exact date, but I imagine it's gonna be around the 80s.
Okay.
And that's kind of like when we're kind of unifying the martial art. Regulating on stances, regulating on the blocks, how does it start, how does it finish, so that we had one general curriculum to go off of. And then we do have not mythological, what's the word I'm looking for? More traditional way of looking at the belt colors as white being the blank slate. Yellow symbolizing the sun's energy coming down to start to give you more growth. Goes into green belt, plants growing from the earth, getting your roots in, getting a solid foundation. Blue symbolizing the sky, you're starting to reach towards the sky, towards new opportunities, if you will. Red symbolizing the passion and fire, warning of danger because you're finally getting proficient enough that you are a threat, potentially a threat to others, maybe yourself. And then the black belt symbolizing that new beginning. But in the end, all belt systems are similar in that they are progress checks. Where are they in their training personally and what they have to focus on next.
The requirements here are nowhere near as vast as the requirements for jiu-jitsu or even karate. It just doesn't include as many variables or options or techniques. Really focusing on a lot of things. You're focusing on a few things for a lot of time, and that's why I'm putting requirements as little. Taekwondo is a specialty sport. I think I saw the average was about 4 years. This average makes a lot more sense because 1, there's not a lot of rankings to go through, and 2, there's not a lot of requirements that you have. I think the difficulty to get a Taekwondo black belt, I'm gonna give this a medium, just like I'm giving karate. I don't think it's easy to get a Taekwondo black belt. I think it just carries a little less emphasis, especially in the public image, because you see that 4 years. You see a lot of kids with these, and frankly, I have an entire opinion on that.
So now I have to ask the question, do you give kids black belts?
No. Kids have to earn them. We do have kids that are black belts. I feel that if they have put in the work to memorize everything, if they've put in the work, get the proficiency in all the strikes and all the kicks and the understandings, and most importantly, how to become a great human being overall,
Better person,
then they definitely earn that belt.
I agree. I think kids that take these classes are like 10 times more passionate than any adult is. For the most part, they're in like forming years where they're learning at a higher rate than we are. But like the idea of not giving a kid a black belt because they're a child is so odd to me. Like I got my black belt when I was 11. I had been training since I was like 4, probably. It took me 7 years. If an adult took 7 years on the same curriculum, they'd be like, "Here's my black belt."
And it's, classes aren't easy. They have days where they're not feeling well, they're tired, they're sore, whatever it is, long day at school. But they're still coming in and they're training and they're staying consistent over a long period of time. I would challenge most adults to think, when's the last time they stuck to something for 4 years? Their CrossFit routine, their New Year's resolution. So I think it shows a lot of discipline. It shows a lot of discipline for kids of young ages to be able to accomplish that. I think another popular misconception about black belts is once you're a black belt, you should be able to beat up everybody.
Yeah, true. It almost seems like what people assume is that you give them a black belt and you say, here you go, like this is perfect. You are now perfect.
Another thing I think is a misconception is that black belt is the end, right? Oh, I'm going to get my black belt. We are still learning new kicks, new punches, new forms, each and every belt. So when we get to our first degree black belt, it's not like, oh, I've done it, I've learned it all, I'm the master. Yeah. It's the opposite. Okay, now I have a good understanding of all of our basic techniques. So it gives you that base foundation, if you will, to start growing off of into those higher degrees of black belt.
Which is very interesting because at this point, we've narrowed down that Judo was the first belt system martial art. And the way our next coach, Alex Lahman, talks about belts really fits with David Wright's approach.
Yeah, so what color belts are there in Judo?
So currently we have white, yellow, orange, green, brown, and black.
Okay.
And I mean, there's a few more like higher black ones, you know, there's black and red, red and white, and then red.
Yeah.
But those are more ceremonial. And the Q ranks are kind of like, I think of them as negative ranks because they start at 6 and they go down to 1.
Oh.
And the 1 is the highest one, you know.
Interesting.
And then you go to your first degree black,
Then
and
you
that's
get the...
yeah, that's like considered your first step. So like I think of the Q ranks as like you're catching up to 0, then you're actually starting like the real thing, you know.
Yeah.
My experience with Judo, well, I've done a collab with one of the most well-known and well-respected judoka in the US, Shintaro Higashi. He's tossed me. I've been ragdolled by him. And then also, very recently, I did a video where I took one class and I entered a tournament. I didn't do the best. To me, this is the most deceptively difficult martial art. And it could be because when I'd done Taekwondo in the past, I had a kicking background. But you know what? We did a lot of takedowns in karate as well. And I'd also been doing sumo. I didn't have any sort of leg up in Judo that I know of, at least. But Judo's history goes well beyond any experience that I have, obviously. And it's time to finally get to the bottom of where do these belt rankings come from?
Jigoro Kano, you know, founded Judo 1882.
Yeah.
Back then it was still just another type of jujitsu. Like every other unarmed combat system, all kind of fell under that category in Japan.
Okay.
So back then they didn't have a gi. They wore like the traditional kimono, hakama, and they had like that sash belt thing.
Okay. A belt, but almost literally like how the average person uses a belt.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Kano came up with the gi because it's more practical to train with.
Yeah.
And it more closely resembles modern clothing. And then people just wore a white belt with the gi. And it was not true white, you know, because they didn't have bleach back then.
Okay.
So it was more like a beige. If you look at Kano's original gi in the Kodokan Museum in Japan, it's like a real sweaty beige look.
Oh, nice, a dirty.
But yeah. But that's how they all were, and we actually saw those in Judo pretty frequently until recently. How it happened is everybody was wearing white belts, and then Kano needed a way to distinguish his Qs from his Dans. They had separate Q ranks, but they still wore the white belt.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't until the 20s, I think, when people started implementing colors in, and it was in the West. And in the 30s, one of Kano's students was teaching in France. He's the one that kind of officially suggested that the colors change. Because all the instructors that were teaching in the West noticed that Westerners, we are extrinsically motivated.
Yeah, for sure.
Green is the highest end of the novice category.
Okay.
So if you were to go compete, the novice division runs from white to green.
I think the first person I competed against
was a green belt. Yeah. To me, that's like the same as in jiu-jitsu, a white belt and a blue belt. Like that's about the difference between a white belt and a green belt.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So the first ranking in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I would say probably 2 years for green.
Now green to brown.
Yeah, that's a jump right there. That's probably the biggest jump in the Q ranks, the sub black belt ranks, because you're going from the novice division to the advanced division, and the advanced division is brown and black.
Yeah.
There's no cap on it.
Yeah.
So that one you're really getting thrown into it, and that's like kind of where your real judo starts. And then you're gonna stay brown for a while because you have 3 ranks of brown. So you're gonna be that brown for another couple of years, you know.
If you haven't noticed, Taekwondo, Judo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, their belt systems kind of make sense. They seem more uniform. And while some places may be different, I think the vast majority all kind of complies to the same system. Karate does not. What it seems like is it totally has to do with sport. See, karate doesn't have one unified sport. There is sport karate, but that's mostly, in my opinion, a type of karate. All other karate kind of just floats around and is a form of self-expression more than it is competition. Taekwondo, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu all have direct outlets to that competition, which means you have to be able to put people in categories. What can help you do that? The belt system. Now, earning those belts, though, I'm not as familiar with. I know roughly there's the 40 original throws, falls and rolls, obviously. There's 35 ground techniques, and then the randori, the sparring, which is filtered throughout all these belt rankings. And then there's the black belt test.
When you're done with brown, then you have your black belt, your shodan, first degree black. Now the test for that, it varies and it doesn't.
Okay.
There is an official standard, and that is the nage no kata.
Okay.
So the nage no kata is the first row of the Gokyo no waza, the first 8 throws of the original 40.
Okay.
You just have to do those throws in a demonstration with a partner.
Oh.
It doesn't sound like much, but you have to do them right and left side. And the hard part is that you guys have to move in sync the whole time. Has to be perfect. And I mean, even to the point of like when you guys are turning around and you're walking, you have to turn back around at the same time, right? Your stepping is at the same time. With that, there's a lot of other testing on the side that does matter to get to the nage no kata. I had to do a written test for my black belt, and it was like 230 something questions.
Holy crap.
Then there's the randori part.
Right.
And again, that's up to the instructor.
Right.
I came up doing something called like the gauntlet. Yeah, you pretty much have to just go with everybody.
Okay.
And no break.
Okay.
And it sucks. One last part of the black belt test.
Okay.
But I don't see it very often nowadays.
It must be really hard.
Yeah. There's such a thing called batsugun in judo.
Okay.
It means instantaneous promotion. And you would usually only get it if you went to a tournament. If you beat 10 black belts with ippon at tournaments, that's the most old school way to get a black belt. So,
Obviously, I didn't do that. I beat a very tired black belt in like a king of the hill type of deal. And then I lost to a green belt. Obviously, I didn't get this. But one of the main similarities between each one of these belt systems is once you reach your black belt, there are 10 rankings above it. In the Japanese systems, they call them dans. I'm not sure what they call them everywhere else, but there's 10. For each of these different martial arts, they usually have some shading of red involved in the black belt as well, especially once you get to a higher rank. And because Judo's the one that started it all, I think I'd want to hear from one specific guy on the implications of these red black belts.
All right, so the Judo red and white belt happens after 5th degree. First to 5th degree is black, period. So you get a 5th degree black belt, it's a black belt. Even when you say like 6th degree, they say black belt, but you get a Koro belt. And a lot of the times a Koro belt is sort of a ceremonious belt, so people don't do randori with it. 6th, 7th, 8th degree is red and white, and then 9th and 10th degree is red. So generally speaking, when you get a red and white belt, you've done judo for a very long time because the timing grade makes it so that you have to be very, very old to achieve this rank. So if you guys look at my YouTube channel too, it's like, oh, he's very young for, I'm actually pushing 40. But there's still not a lot of 40-year-olds. I was the youngest person to get this in the US until Kayla Harrison won a double Olympic gold, and they gave it to her also, but much younger than me. So it is very young to have this belt, and even those guys who sort of have the rank generally wear a black belt when they're working out. When they're doing a ceremony or when they're in a teaching bowl, they wear it, and then when they wear it, generally it kind of signifies like, hey, I'm old, I put in my time, I'm not gonna do randori today, and it's kind of rude to ask somebody with a red and white belt to do randori, you know? But I said, forget all that, I'm gonna wear it every day because I love it, I earned it, I'm gonna do randori, and it's pretty cool. Now, talking about the red belt, my dad's a red belt, he's a 9th degree judo guy, he's been doing it forever. Obviously, he's 86 years old, he doesn't do it anymore, and I asked him one day, yo, Dad, like, what is it like, or like, what does it really mean to be a red belt, you know? And I will never forget the way he said it. He goes, oh, you know, something like I was really good at Harai, and I had a whole system, Kochi, right, left, Soto, bang, I would like destroy legs. You know, I would just rip it, I didn't care if the guy's knee would tear or shoulder, I just had like the most brute force method. And he's talking about it and he goes, you know, red belt is something that's just left over after you can't do it anymore. You know, he goes, I was a Harai Goshi guy. I taught everybody. And when your Harai Goshi is gone, this is what you got.
Most of the time, all of this is to get you to a point that you can start doing the martial art correctly. This is all kind of just learning. And then in my opinion, once you get the black belt, it's once you start applying, innovating. And while all of these martial arts are different, that's one thing that the belt system has in common almost everywhere.
I think one last note is that I want to encourage all people to train in martial arts, because there's no way that it's not going to make you a better person overall. So I always tell our students, especially when they're testing for that black belt, that, you know, my black belt isn't the same as Sensei Seth's black belt. My black belt isn't the same as any of the other students' black belts, because I know how much work and sacrifice I put in to achieve this belt and this rank. So that allows me to take a certain amount of pride out of my accomplishment. So when you work your butt off to achieve your specific rank or black belt, then the amount of pride you take out of it is the amount of work that you put into it, just like anything else in your life. So if you want it to have more value, then you put more work, more time, more dedication into your art, and then nobody can take that away from you.